Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Sasuke, it's really not that bad. The Uchiha wordlessly ripped off his shirt, balling it up and tossing it into the hamper with sharp precision. Babies spit up all the time. Sasuke growled under his breath and turned on the shower. I'm sure Akihiko didn't mean it. He shot Sakura with a withering glare from across the bathroom. She stood in the doorway, a messy ponytail barely holding back pink strands, dark circles under her eyes, and a sleepy smile tugging at her lips. Somehow, she still looked radiant to him. He'd enjoyed the night, at least the parts that hadn't involved projectile baby vomit, but this definitely wasn't how he imagined their first all-nighter together. He'd envisioned something with a lot less clothing. And definitely no third party. Sasuke wasn't the sharing type. He yanked off his pants, not bothering to hide his irritation. If she wanted to stand there and watch, fine by him. Sakura, of course, respectfully averted her gaze but didn't leave. She understood. He was grumpy, tired, and covered in crusty formula. It was hard not to be irritated after holding a baby for 6 straight hours. But that's what surprised her most. He had barely let go of Akihiko the entire night. Didn't his arm ache? She'd only held the baby for 3 hours, and her muscles were already screaming. Sasuke had managed nearly double that, only relinquishing the child when it started wailing for food. The second Akihiko opened his mouth to cry, Sasuke froze, like someone had handed him a live grenade. Sakura calmly took the baby from his stiff arms and called in a medic to bring formula. Once she had the bottle and Akihiko quieted, she looked up to find Sasuke hovering, clearly eager to hold the baby again. She gave in, and showed him how to feed him properly. Of course, Sasuke, being the infuriatingly competent man that he was, caught on immediately and let the baby down the entire bottle. She barely got the words, "Make sure to burp him gently," out before Akihiko spit up all over him. Now, the proud Uchiha stood under the stream of hot water, trying to scrub off dried baby vomit like it was a personal offense. He grunted, fingers digging into his scalp, "I think it's dried." Sakura smirked. "Need some help getting it off." The words slipped out before she could stop them. Her eyes widened the second she realized what she'd said. Sasuke paused. He tilted his head back under the spray, then, to her utter shock, slid the shower curtain open and held out one hand, inviting. That was all he said, but the smug gleam in his eyes said everything else. He leaned one arm against the tiled wall, cocky and infuriatingly relaxed. Sakura flushed, heart tripping over itself. "Oh okay. Just, sit down in the tub and all." Before she could finish, a very naked, very soapy Sasuke leaned out of the shower and raised a single eyebrow. Coming. Her breath caught. She swallowed hard and stepped forward, each step heavier than the last. He'd obeyed her, surprisingly, sitting with his back to her. She dropped to her knees behind him. "Shampoo." He handed it to her. Her hands trembled as she squirted the thick liquid into her palms. "Get it together, Sakura." She'd been around naked men before, she'd performed far more invasive procedures as a medic, but this wasn't a patient. This was Sasuke. Her fingers worked through his hair. Silky, thick, and surprisingly soft. She massaged his scalp gently, letting the water rinse away the remaining grime. Her focus wavered as she took in the strong line of his back, the steam curling around his shoulders. "Don't look down. Don't look down. Hikari-san seemed pretty happy we stayed with Akihiko all night, right?" she asked, trying to distract herself, and him, from the growing tension. He answered, almost smug. "You know," she hesitated, rinsing his hair one last time. "You're actually pretty good with babies." Sasuke raised a brow at that but didn't interrupt. "I think Akihiko really liked you." Her voice softened with sincerity. "Maybe you'd want to visit him again." Another soft, this one sounded pleased. She smiled and reached for the conditioner, rubbing it into his scalp. Her hands lingered just a little longer than necessary. When she finished rinsing, her hand dropped, but Sasuke caught it before it touched her leg. My back, he said, still not looking at her. It still needs washing. Her breath hitched. She had two options. Walk out of this bathroom like a sane person or pick up that washcloth and touch every inch of the man who haunted her dreams. Her hand shook slightly as she reached for the cloth. Sasuke didn't miss a thing. Every tremble, every shift in her breathing, the tiny pause before she touched him, he felt it all. And he liked it. She pressed the cloth to his back, dragging it slowly down. He leaned forward slightly, the muscles in his shoulders flexing under her touch. He hadn't expected to react like this. He thought he'd seduce her, just a little tease, but now she was the one taking control. Sakura, confident he wasn't watching, pressed her index finger into his back in a slow, circular motion. Sasuke. His name came out in a breathless whisper. Sasuke, she purred again, gently tucking his damp hair aside to press her lips to the curve of his neck. Do you want it harder? Her hands pressed lower on his spine, or softer. Her palms glided up his back in a teasing sweep. He was silent, but his shoulders were tense, and the faint glow of his Sharingan bled into his reflection in the faucet. He was losing control. And then her lips found his ear. A teasing flick of her tongue, a whisper of breath. Sasuke, do you like it like this? Her voice was sweet, honey-drenched. Her fingers ran hard down his spine. Or like this? She lightly traced her way back up, one finger at a time. He clenched his jaw. This wasn't supposed to happen. He was supposed to be the one in control. Instead, he was the one fighting not to pin her to the tile and ravish her. Just when he thought he had it together, the cloth slipped from her hands with a soft plop into the tub. Ah, she laughed airily. Sorry, let me just. Her hand dipped beneath the water, brushing against his thigh. His eyes widened. Ah, there. She retrieved the cloth, dragging it casually up his leg, brushing against his painfully hard erection, then up his abs. Found it. She rested the cloth on his shoulder like a crown. Sasuke, she moaned playfully, leaning close so her breasts brushed his back through her shirt. He swallowed hard. All finished. She stood. And without another word, she walked out of the bathroom, leaving a stunned Uchiha soaking, breathless, and absolutely wrecked. Sakura stammered, her cheeks nearly as red as Gaara's hair. Arigato, Kazekage-sama. Across from her, Gaara raised a brow. Earlier that morning, when he'd stopped by the hospital for an unannounced visit, Kankuro grumbling behind him like a reluctant shadow, he hadn't expected to find the head medic passed out at her desk. Her face had been nestled in a mountain of charts, her pink hair spilling like silk across the paperwork. He tried to drape his white sash over her shoulders without waking her, but she stirred anyway, blinking blearily at him before scrambling upright and apologizing profusely. Something about a sleepless night. Kankuro, even the tactless one, made an entirely inappropriate joke that Sakura pretended not to hear. After a brief conversation, Gaara had invited her to lunch. He said he had something to discuss. That's how they ended up here, at Yokohama, a quiet, elegant place etched into Sakura's memory for more than one reason. It was here that Sasuke had asked her to help restore his clan. The irony of dining here now with Gaara of all people wasn't lost on her. Even the hostess seemed to recognize the irony. The woman had stiffened upon seeing Sakura walk in with the Kazekage, her eyes darting nervously between them as if bracing for another dramatic outburst. Sakura offered a small, sheepish smile in response. So, you wanted to speak with me? She asked, finally breaking the silence as she lifted a slice of tuna nigiri to her lips. Ah, Gaara murmured, calmly chewing a piece of gizzard. He motioned toward the third chair. Kankuro, sit. Kankuro plopped into the seat between them, arms crossed but watchful. I've already sent word to the hospital in Suna, Gaara said. They're expecting you. Sakura blinked, chopsticks pausing midair. These are the preparations you mentioned earlier. Gaara nodded once. I will return to Sunagakure in a few days. I'd like you to come with me. She nearly choked on her bite, quickly swallowing. It's not that I wouldn't love to, Kazekage-sama. It's just a little sudden. I still have time to. You misunderstand, he interrupted gently, raising a hand to halt her. It's not permanent. Not yet. Officially, we'll report it as a simple diplomatic visit. A peaceful exchange of knowledge. You'll stay for a few days, teach our medics some of your methods. Meanwhile, he hesitated, I'll begin preparing a home suited to your preferences. Just in case. His words trailed off, but the meaning lingered between them like a fragile thread. Sakura's fingers curled around her teacup. She understood what he wasn't saying. If Sasuke didn't follow through, if things unraveled, she would have somewhere safe to go. Somewhere far from Konoha. A contingency plan, she said softly. Gaara gave a small nod. Exactly. It's a good idea, she admitted, taking a small sip. But as head medical ninja, my sudden absence will raise questions. Which means, Gaara said, glancing at Kankuro, Kakashi will assign shinobi to accompany you. Unfortunately, she sighed, chuckling, yes. Protocol. Kankuro leaned forward, voice low. Any serious discussions about your potential relocation need to happen in private. Nighttime. No one from Konoha can overhear. Gaara agreed silently. If word got out, especially to the council, it could complicate things. They could demand she fulfill her obligation to the Uchiha clan before she even had the chance to leave. They could bind her to a future she might not want. I'll go, then, Sakura said at last, but her voice lacked conviction. Gaara's gaze sharpened. You sound hesitant. She sighed and leaned against the wall behind her, her shoulders sagging. This is my home, Gaara-sama, she murmured. No matter how prepared I am, no matter how necessary this is, the idea of leaving it all behind still hurts. He stared at her quietly, noting the vulnerability in her voice, the weary way she carried herself. She looked so tired, tired of fighting, tired of waiting. And yet she kept standing. Gaara exchanged a glance with Kankuro. The older sibling gave a curt nod and rose without a word, slipping quietly from the room and closing the door behind him. Sakura, Gaara said gently. I didn't mean to cause you more pain. No. She sat up straighter, a fire returning to her eyes. You've done so much for me. I won't let you apologize for that. But Gaara's expression shifted, solemn, heavy. There was something else weighing on him. When I was younger, he began slowly, my only purpose was to kill. I believed that taking lives was the only way to prove my own existence. Sakura blinked at the sudden confession. And I tried to kill you once, he said, eyes downcast. You and your friends. Gaara, she started, but he bowed deeply. I'm sorry, he said, voice low and sincere. I know I've changed. But that doesn't erase the past. I was a fool, and I ask for your forgiveness. Sakura stared at him for a long moment, then slowly reached across the table. Her fingers curled around his hand, calloused, rough, and yet warm. There's nothing to forgive, she said with a smile. You're not that person anymore. I see who you are now. For the first time in a long while, Gaara felt a tightness in his chest, not of anger or grief, but something soft. Something he wasn't sure he deserved. We'll figure this out, Sakura said again, firmer this time. Together. Uchiha Sasuke had been drifting in the Uchiha Lake since Sakura left for the hospital that morning. The water was cool against his skin, the sun warm on his face. He sighed, letting the gentle current carry him on his back, eyes turned toward the sky. Shikamaru was right, cloud watching had its merits. It was a rare kind of peace, the kind he didn't realize he'd missed until it settled over him like a soft blanket. He was supposed to be resting anyway. A mild concussion meant strict orders from Sakura not to train, fight, or even lift a kunai if he could help it. It was irritating, but after the morning he'd had, maybe not entirely unwelcome. Sakura had left him aching and aroused beyond reason. He'd spent nearly an hour in the shower trying to cool himself off, but the image of her soft lips and teasing fingers haunted him still. When he finally stepped out, still soaking wet and half-hard, she was already gone, tugging on her sandals with a quick apology and a rushed goodbye. So the lake had been his solution. A wise one, he thought. Cold water, fresh air, and solitude. That was, until Hatake Kakashi appeared, quite literally out of nowhere, to drag him from his peaceful exile and over to Naruto's house. Sasuke had refused, flat out. Even when Kakashi insisted it was a direct order from the Hokage, Sasuke didn't budge. But the moment Sakura's name was mentioned, his resistance melted into an irritated grumble, and he followed. Which is how he now found himself standing in the Uzumaki's kitchen, of all places, wearing one of Hinata's frilly aprons. He was helping Sakura make dinner for Team 7 like it was 10 years ago, except this time, there was tension in the air that had nothing to do with missions. Apparently, Naruto wanted to recreate the good old days. Sasuke wasn't fooled. It was a thinly veiled excuse to get Sakura to cook for him in Hinata's absence. Still, as he chopped onions beside her while she peeled potatoes, he couldn't deny, there was something comforting about it all. Sigh, Sakura huffed, brushing a pink strand of hair behind her ear. Stop trying to measure it exactly. Sai frowned at the cup in his hand, squinting. But the recipe states precisely 1 cup of panko. If I overfill. Naruto snatched the cup and dumped the breadcrumbs into the bowl without hesitation. Live a little, Sai. I am alive, Sai replied, utterly serious, pressing 2 fingers to his neck. I have a pulse. Sakura reached up to grab the rice maker from the top of the cabinet, but it was just out of her reach. She rocked up onto her toes, her hips bumping the counter for leverage. Just as she prepared to leap, warm hands circled her waist. She let out a surprised breath as Sasuke gently moved her aside and easily reached for the appliance. If you need something, he said quietly, handing it to her, ask. Her fingers brushed his as she took it. Arigato, she murmured, cheeks blooming with color. Naruto, what are you doing? Kakashi asked dryly from the doorway as the blonde triumphantly tossed a whole, uncooked chicken into the mixing bowl. Adding the chicken, Naruto replied, tone unsure as he held the bird by the leg like a trophy. You're supposed to cut it first. Sakura barked, placing the rice maker down and rushing over. How was I supposed to know that? It's called a recipe, Dobi, Sasuke muttered. Shut it, Tem. Sakura, muttering a string of expletives under her breath, scooped the chicken out of the bowl and slapped it onto the cutting board. Baka, she snapped. Dickless, Sai chimed in helpfully, thinking he was playing along. Sakura yanked open a drawer, brandishing a large chef's knife. Kakashi's visible eye widened. With a single, surgical slice, she cleaved the chicken clean in half. Silence. The 3 men stared, speechless. Sakura beamed at them sweetly. They all quietly returned to their tasks. So I hear you're getting along with Gaara, Naruto said casually, chopping celery like it was the most natural pivot in the world. Yeah, Sakura said nonchalantly, separating the bones from the meat. I had lunch with him today. He's sweet. Sasuke's hand froze momentarily over the onions, his eyes shifting toward her. The tone she used, gentle, casual, the same one she used with Naruto, made him relax. Maybe he didn't need to worry about the cage after all. He invited me to Sunagaker, she added, as though she were commenting on the weather. He wants me to train some of the medics there. Naruto dropped his celery. I'll submit the request through Kaka-sensei, of course, she said, waving the knife in his direction. But it's a good opportunity. Especially since the hospital's been short on supplies and there's not much I can do until they arrive. Naruto swallowed nervously. He'd completely forgotten that Team 8 still hadn't returned with the medical shipment. Why yeah. They haven't come in yet. Exactly, Sakura said briskly, resuming her chopping. Ino can manage things here while I'm gone. Kakashi cast a sidelong glance at Sasuke, curious. Surprisingly, the Uchiha seemed unbothered, focused, if anything. Kakashi had expected jealousy. Instead, Sasuke looked thoughtful. You'll need guards, Naruto said quickly. I'll start the paperwork tomorrow, Kakashi said. Maybe. Hey, why not take Team 7? It won't be the same without me, but who better to escort you than your old teammates? Sakura's eyes sparkled. With Team 7 escorting her, she'd have cover. Time. Space to talk to Gaara and make plans, just in case. How could she say no? I'd like that, she said honestly. But what about Sasuke's police duties? I can cover it, Sasuke said simply, tossing the onions into the bowl. Choji owes me a favor. And I have the flower shop, Sai tried, it is my duty as the future Yamanaka son-in-law to uphold. Kaka-sensei. Naruto cut him off, eyes pleading. Kakashi sighed. I suppose you all can go to Sunagaker. But Naruto, you need to prepare the paperwork for it all. Then it's settled, Naruto declared. I'll finalize the documents tomorrow. We'll leave in a few days. Sai looked around, face drawn in concern. But what about Yamanaka Hana? No one answered. Ah, Sakura sighed, leaning into Sasuke as they slipped under the covers. Naruto may be an idiot most days, but every now and then, he surprises me. Sasuke gave a small hum of agreement. As much as it pained him to admit, the dinner had been a good idea. Even Sai, awkward, uncomfortable Sai, had managed to be somewhat tolerable. You just had to sift through his misguided insults to find the good intentions buried beneath. Sakura nestled her head against Sasuke's chest, her breath warm on his skin. But Sasuke wasn't about to forget the torture she'd inflicted that morning. He narrowed his eyes. How dare she snuggle up to him so sweetly after leaving him hot, bothered, and soaking wet? Nay, Sasuke, she murmured, the moonlight spilling through the window and dancing across her porcelain skin. Would you like to come with me to the hospital tomorrow? Her fingers danced along his chest. I think Akihiko misses you. Her voice was innocent. Her actions, not so much. She lightly grazed the pad of her finger against his nipple, tugging gently with her thumb and forefinger. Sasuke's muscles tensed beneath her. Was she doing this on purpose? Or was she just that oblivious to the effect she had on him? Either way, she needed to be punished. Without warning, he tilted her chin up, catching the glimmer of surprise in her jade eyes before pressing kisses across her face, everywhere but her mouth. Her cheeks, her jaw, her temple. Slow, deliberate, teasing. When her lips parted in anticipation, he ran his tongue along the seam of her mouth and pulled back before she could catch it. She let out a small whimper, wrapping her arms around his back, trying to pull him closer. Sasuke smirked. Her legs slid to straddle him, her fingers threading into his hair, urging him down. She wanted the kiss. She was begging for it. So he gave it to her. Their lips met, soft and slow at first, before Sakura deepened it, pressing him down into the mattress, her thighs locking around his hips. He let her take control, just for a moment, his breaths brushing against her skin between kisses. Then she shifted, sliding her tongue down his neck, pausing only to circle his pulse point with her tongue. She wanted to feel his heartbeat, fast, wild, completely hers. The taste of him, salty and warm, drove her mad. She moved lower, her mouth brushing over his chest until she reached his nipple. She flicked it with her tongue. Then bit down, gently. Sasuke hissed through his teeth, one hand fisting the sheets as her other hand splayed across his abs. She was fully aware of what she was doing to him. There was no doubt now. And the rock-hard press of his cock against her through her clothes. That confirmed it. She grinned against his skin, nipping lightly as her breasts ghosted over him. When she began sliding down toward his waistband, Sasuke growled low in his throat. No more teasing. In one swift motion, he grabbed her hips and flipped her beneath him. She landed with a soft oof, her hair splaying out over the pillows, eyes wide and dark with lust. Still fully clothed, but barely. His gaze raked over her like fire, every inch of her body marked by his desire. Her pulse fluttered beneath her skin as he leaned down, mouth brushing her neck. He moved slowly, savoring her, his thumb massaging slow circles into her hip. Sakura, he whispered against her ear, his breath hot. She shivered. He shifted, settling his weight between her thighs. The hard length of him pressed against her, and she instinctively parted her legs, welcoming him in. Sasuke dragged his fingers up her side, resting his hand on her cheek as he trailed kisses across her jaw, stopping just before her mouth. He hovered there, eyes locked on hers, before tracing the outline of her lips with his finger, first the top, then the bottom. Then, slowly, he replaced it with the tip of his tongue. Her breath hitched. And finally, he kissed her again. Deep and slow. Her body arched up into him, her hands curling into his hair as she moaned into his mouth. Sakura, he murmured breathlessly, pulling back just enough to meet her eyes. She was lost in him, utterly drowning in the heat of his gaze. When he tilted her chin and guided her up to him, she moved on instinct, chasing his lips again. And then, whop! A pillow hit her in the face. She blinked. Sasuke had rolled away, settling into his side of the bed with maddening ease. His smirk was pure evil as he pulled the covers up. "Good night, Sakura. You called?" Naruto asked, folding his arms behind his head as he leaned against the doorway to the Hokage's office. "Yeah," Kakashi replied, not looking up from the stack of papers he was pretending to read. "Come in. Close the door." Naruto stepped in, raising a brow. "I need to talk to you about your mission in Suna," Kakashi said, finally lifting his gaze to Naruto. "Right. Escort duty for Sakura-chan," Naruto said, stepping closer to the desk. "Simple enough. I'm just there to keep her safe and make sure nothing explodes." "Except," Kakashi continued, fingers steepled in front of his mouth, "there's more to it than that." Naruto's smile faltered. He caught movement to the side and glanced at Sai, standing silently by the window, arms crossed. He noticed Sasuke wasn't present. That was telling. "There's an additional objective," Kakashi said. Strictly off the record. Naruto and Sai exchanged a look. "I need you two to nudge things along between Sakura and Sasuke," Kakashi said slowly, as if the words tasted foreign in his mouth. Sai blinked. "You want us to play matchmaker?" he asked, incredulous. "Why?" Naruto narrowed his gaze. Kakashi sighed. "Because the council is breathing down my neck to get the Uchiha clan repopulated." His fingers made air quotes, then dropped with a thud onto the desk. "They've decided Sakura's the ideal candidate and that 3 months is the limit before they start enforcing more drastic measures." Sai tilted his head. "So you intend for us to orchestrate a romance under false pretenses?" Naruto grimaced. "It's not false if the feelings are already there." "Are you sure about that?" Sai mused. "Sai, shut up." Naruto glared and rubbed his temples. "This isn't just about feelings or chemistry. If Sasuke doesn't come to his senses, the council will invoke a directive. One that strips Sakura of her choice in the matter." He clenched his fists. "I don't want to see that happen." Kakashi's lone visible eye narrowed. His voice dropped. "And does Sasuke know?" Naruto hesitated. "No, not yet. I haven't told him. Sakura-chan hasn't either." "Good," Kakashi said flatly. "Let's keep it that way." Kakashi didn't trust Sasuke with that kind of knowledge. Not after everything. Not when Sakura was involved. "We'll do it," Kakashi said, rising from his chair with a sigh. "Though I wish you'd told me sooner." Naruto lowered his head, guilt written across his face like wet ink on paper. "I didn't know how." "Of course we'll do it," Sai added, cutting through the heavy atmosphere like a blade. "But there's a significant flaw in this plan." Both men turned to him. Sasuke does not have a penis. There was a full beat of silence. What? Naruto choked. Kakashi facepalmed. I think he means metaphorically. Right, Sai. Do I? Sai blinked. Naruto groaned, dragging a hand down his face. We're all doomed. Probably, Kakashi muttered, pulling his cloak from the back of the chair. Let's just hope Suna has good weather. Matchmaking in a sandstorm would be miserable. It's already miserable enough with this dimwit, Naruto muttered, shooting a glare at Sai. Make it work, Kakashi said with a glare. That's an order. Uchiha Sasuke was a little surprised when Naruto burst into the Konoha police department breathless, dragging a very calm and unbothered Sai behind him like a storm trailing a first. Sasuke was going to ask what idiotic emergency had brought Naruto panting into his office, but the presence of Sai, the human embodiment of emotional sabotage, answered that question well enough. When Sai was around, everything was wrong. Sai says you don't have a penis. Naruto wheezed. Sasuke's temple throbbed. First day back at work after a concussion, and already he was being harassed in his own office. He closed his eyes and pinched the bridge of his nose, inhaling deeply like he could just breathe his coworkers out of existence. I merely stated that, having never seen it, I cannot confirm its existence, Sai said evenly, glancing at Sasuke. Forgive me, but based on available evidence, the most logical conclusion is that it does not exist. He turned to Naruto. Although you claim to have seen it several times. Shut it, Sai. Naruto barked, face red as a tomato. Is that all you came here to say? Sasuke asked through gritted teeth. Naruto and Sai shared a look. The answer was no, obviously. After talking with Kakashi, the meddling blonde and his artistic shadow had decided to make an impromptu visit to Sasuke in hopes of speeding things along between him and Sakura. It was almost the end of the first month, and Naruto was determined to report progress, whatever that meant to him. Actually, Sai said, backing away a half step as Naruto radiated growing hostility, we came to ask if you've performed coitus with Sakura yet. Sasuke leaned back in his chair and stared blankly at them. His patience was depleted. His migraine doubled. He had work to do. Mountains of it. Reports, patrol scheduling, a petty theft case, and now this, an interrogation about his sex life. Way to go, Sai, Naruto grumbled, smacking his teammate upside the head. Couldn't have eased into that one, huh? You are both extremely irritating, Sasuke muttered. So you haven't, Naruto prodded. It's none of your damn business, Sasuke snapped. I must disagree, Sai replied, voice cool. As Hokage, Kakashi is responsible for monitoring the future population of Konoha. If Sakura is pregnant, Naruto sputtered, eyes bulging as he rounded on Sasuke. If she is, you better take responsibility, Tem. I swear. She's not pregnant, Sasuke cut in, resisting the sudden urge to slam his head into his desk. We haven't had sex. Now get the hell out. No way. Naruto crossed his arms, planting himself in front of the desk. You're dating one of my best friends, and I want to make sure you're treating her right. Sasuke didn't bother correcting him. Technically, he and Sakura weren't dating. There was no label, no declaration, just a quiet, mutual agreement of intimacy. I'm not leaving, Naruto huffed. Look, I know you two are getting all hot and heavy, Sasuke's glare intensified, but could you at least take her on a date before we leave for Sunagaku? Sasuke stiffened. The last time he'd tried that, it ended with a nauseatingly sweet dessert, a rickety outdoor lantern, and Sakura vomiting all over his shirt. Not exactly a romantic success. I respectfully decline, he said, cold as ice. You need to take her on a date, Naruto insisted. Don't you want her to rebuild your clan? We went for a walk the other night. Naruto and Sai exchanged looks. Perhaps you would like to borrow one of my books. Sai offered, eyes bright. Ino and I have never gone on a date. There are over 1,000 ideas. No. A short answer, Sai mused. Much like your penis. Sasuke's eyebrow twitched. Dates need flowers. Naruto whined. And candlelight. What the hell are you even doing? Walking around together like some sad stray dogs. Ask her on a damn date. You know she'll say yes. Sasuke stared at him. He didn't need to ask Sakura out. They were already close. Closer than anyone else. He cooked for her. She patched him up. They took quiet walks. She laughed more, and he didn't mind her presence. But now Naruto had him thinking, was that enough? He tilted his head back, eyes scanning the ceiling. Was there more to this than just being there for her? Was romance the part he'd skipped? If you give her a taste of romance, your chances of procreation are doubled, Sai added, completely serious. That got Sasuke's attention. His gaze cut sharply to Naruto. What's a place she'd like? Naruto lit up like a festival lantern. Ichiraku ramen. Smack. Both Sasuke and Sai hit him at the same time. Sasuke gave Sai a curt nod of approval. The emotionless bastard was finally catching on. What the hell? Naruto shouted, rubbing his head. I get why Sasuke hit me, but Sai. It felt appropriate, Sai said blandly. Is it not normal to strike someone after they've said something idiotic? Ah, Sasuke agreed. I do believe Sakura would enjoy a trip to Kobe, Sai added. I overheard her and Ino discussing it during one of their girl nights. Sasuke considered this. Kobe. Scenic. Classy. Private. He could work with that. I'll ask her tonight, he said at last. Uchiha Sasuke paused in the doorway, genuinely surprised to find Haruno Sakura calmly lying in his bed like she belonged there. Her back rested against his pillows, one leg bent slightly, a thick medical text open in her lap. She didn't look up right away, only turned a page with a slow flick of her fingers. When she finally glanced at him, it was with the serene ease of someone who'd done this 100 times. How was your day? She asked, voice quiet and casual, her eyes already returning to the book. Good, Sasuke replied, tugging his shirt over his head and tossing it aside. Good, Sakura echoed with a faint nod. Then silence. Sasuke blinked, narrowing his eyes slightly. Was this that silent treatment Naruto and Sai always whined about? No, she didn't look irritated or distant. If anything, she seemed completely at peace. Too at peace. Without a word, he crossed the room and reached for the book, gently sliding it from her fingers. Her brow arched in mild amusement as she finally gave him her full attention. He leaned in, one hand coming up to cradle her face, the other bracing beside her shoulder. Her lips parted slightly, and he kissed her, slow and intentional, tongue slipping past her lips, tasting her. Her breath caught. Oh. Sasuke pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. Still calm. Still watching him. But now, expectant. Her hands had gone still beside her, fingers curled loosely against the sheets. He pressed forward again, gently easing her down against the mattress. Her hair spread across his pillow like spilled cherry blossoms. Sasuke hovered over her, dark eyes studying her face as his hands slid into her hair, gripping it with quiet reverence. Beautiful, he murmured, repeating the word she'd once whispered about him. Your eyes. Sakura's breath hitched. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Before she could answer, he kissed her again. Deeper. With intent. One of his hands found hers, fingers tangling, then tightening, not enough to hurt, just enough to keep her grounded beneath him. She responded instinctively, her body arching just slightly into his. He felt the sound she made vibrate through his own chest, traveling down to his bones. He pursued her mouth like he was chasing meaning, tasting something he'd long denied himself. And she let him. When she finally moaned softly into him, Sasuke's body reacted before his mind caught up. He felt everything. Her warmth, her surrender, her quiet permission. This wasn't just heat. It was comfort. Familiar. Intimate. Real. Sakura was barely aware of the fabric of her shirt rising as he kissed her neck down to her breasts. He could see her nipples through the silky blue material, and it just drove him to want more of her. He wanted her naked under him, hair sprawled out with her lips begging for him to pour himself inside of her. And then, she made a noise he knew he definitely desired more of. Her lips parted to exhale a sigh of pleasure and he felt the chills run down his spine. He licked along the flesh of her chest, his other hand pulling from her entangled hair down to the small silky shorts she was wearing. He tugged at the waistband and then at the lace underwear she was wearing. He slowly opened his eyes, his fingers close to her second pair of lips. She gasped and tensed. He felt her shake and he pulled his hand away. She wasn't ready for that. Not quite yet. So he gently kissed her forehead and sought to comfort her. Still, his hands were so close to her breasts. Sasuke pulled his fingers away from the mounds of flesh begging to be taken. He would respect her body. This was, after all, his lover and the mother to his future children. Her body was a temple he wanted to remain sacred until it was ready to cave to his will. He gently lowered himself onto her, pressing her body into the mattress further. He heard her say his name, and he kissed her earlobe in response. Making sure not to accidentally slip into the inner workings of her ear, he traced her lobe with his tongue and made his way to the back of her neck. He buried his face into her, nipping lightly at her neck. Feeling his hard cock against her throbbing core, Sakura couldn't help but to raise her hips to meet his. He responded by thrusting back. Her palms rubbed against his bare chest, and he opened his eyes to look at the ecstasy on her face. While he was content with pleasing her, his own desires could not be put off for much longer. So he ventured down once again. His fingers made it past her waistband and into the lace panties she wore. She kept kissing him, vaguely aware of the presence near her vagina. He rubbed the soft skin around her entranceway, feeling the wetness that had seeped out of her. He was so close to her lips. He wanted to part them and slide his fingers inside of her. Wait. Sasuke's eyes widened as Sakura pushed him away. She blushed furiously and covered her mouth. She wouldn't look at him. She said, swallowing nervously and trembling. I'm not ready for that. She threw herself out of bed and fled for the bathroom. Sasuke looked at her fading back, bringing his soaked fingers to his lips. He licked her sweet juices from his fingers. Yes, she was his Sakura. And he was going to taint her petals thoroughly. And you just snuck out. Ino gasped, trailing alongside Haruno Sakura down the hospital corridor. Are you kidding me right now? Sakura groaned, dragging a hand down her face. I couldn't just stay there, waiting for him to wake up. After last night, she turned and leaned her forehead against the sterile white wall, exhaling hard. He was right there, Ino. And I just ran away. With a quiet thud, she gently tapped her head against the wall, then again, a little harder. A small dent formed in the plaster. Who does that? She muttered, rubbing at the spot with unnecessary focus. Seriously, who does that? Apparently, you do, Ino snorted, trying not to laugh as a pair of nurses gave them a wide berth. Relax, forehead girl. I told you, Sai used to faint every time he got excited. You're fine. Sakura let out a tortured sigh as Ino tugged her away from the wall. I can't face him. I was supposed to be seducing him, not panicking like a 12-year-old on her first date. Ino shrugged, unconcerned. And how exactly were you planning to seduce him and keep your own desires under control? That's like lighting a match and trying not to burn your fingers. That's the problem, Sakura cried. I want our intimacy to mean something more. Ino gave her a sympathetic look but didn't flinch. Okay, but do you really think he'd be acting the way he is if he didn't care at all? She asked, scratching her neck in a very Shikamaru-like way. I'm not saying love's not important, but you might be overthinking it. Sakura's expression crumpled. I don't want to feel like I'm being used. I want to make love, not just be a one-night stand. Ino offered helpfully. Sakura groaned again. Exactly. Then ask him. Ino's voice turned firm. Next time you're mid-seduction, just look him in the eye and ask why he wants this. He's not the type to waste time. You'll get your answer. Sakura blinked. You think I should just ask him? Yep. Nothing like a little emotional interrogation while naked to get to the truth. Ino grinned, completely unbothered. I bet you'll be pleasantly surprised. Sakura rolled her eyes, still mortified. I don't know if I'll even get that far again. I mean, I bolted out of that room. Next time, maybe just breathe through it, Ino mused cheerfully. I don't have time to ease into this, Sakura muttered, crossing her arms. I've got, 2 months to get this emotionally constipated man to fall in love with me. Ino smirked. You know, maybe before you aim for love, you should make sure you're actually in a relationship. Sakura frowned. We're sort of in one. Are you, though? Ino asked, one brow arched. If you're this unsure, maybe step one is having that conversation. Sakura gave a long-suffering groan. Oh, Ino. Don't. Oh, Ino, me, the blonde said with a glare. You want something real with him. Put in the work. You're a grown woman, not some lovesick child. Sakura sighed. But she nodded. She could do that. She could sit down and talk to him, ask for clarity. After all, he'd asked her to help rebuild his clan. She could at least ask for intentions. If he truly didn't want more than that, well, she'd deal with it. But she deserved to know. Yeah, she murmured, steeling herself. I'll ask him tonight. Ask who what? Came a voice from just behind them. Both women turned in sync to find Kankuro and Gaara approaching from the other end of the hallway, looking just as out of place as usual among the white coats and fluorescent lights. Sakura blinked. Gaara-sama. Kankuro. What brings you to the hospital? Gaara gave her a polite nod. Do you have a moment to speak? Sakura exchanged a glance with Ino. She didn't have any appointments lined up, and she'd just been walking Ino through department tasks for when she took over in her absence. Of course, Sakura replied with a friendly smile. I apologize for the short notice, Gaara said as they stepped aside from foot traffic. But I was hoping to discuss. Sakura froze as her stomach let out a long, dramatic growl that echoed down the hall. Her ears flushed crimson. She hadn't eaten a thing since tiptoeing out of the Uchiha estate that morning, and now, it was well past noon. Kankuro chuckled. Ino snorted. And to her absolute horror, even Gaara gave a small, amused chortle. He tilted his head and said with a rare smile, lunch first, then. Uchiha Sasuke was annoyed, no, irritated, to say the least. First of all, Haruno Sakura had snuck out of bed before he had the chance to wake up. That alone would have soured his mood for the day. But to make matters worse, he'd completely forgotten to ask her on a proper date. He couldn't believe it. He, the stoic, composed Uchiha heir, had been reduced to a distracted mess the night before. The way she had looked, the way she had touched him, it had completely thrown him off kilter. He hadn't been thinking straight. And now, the opportunity had slipped right through his fingers. They were leaving for Suna tomorrow. Time was not on his side. But he was Uchiha Sasuke. He made time work for him. So there he was, sitting stiffly behind his desk, trying to pass on his work at the Konoha police force to none other than Akamichi Choji, who, despite Sasuke's initial reservations years ago, had proven to be competent, loyal, and steady. Clumsy at times, yes. But when it came down to it, Sasuke trusted him. And if someone files a complaint, Sasuke said, gesturing to the beige filing cabinet behind him, you make a copy before handing it to the subordinates. Asu. Choji responded brightly with a salute. Sasuke paused for a moment, studying him. It had always struck him as strange. Choji was next in line to lead his clan. He didn't need this job. Yet he'd been showing up for years, working hard, never asking for recognition. It made Sasuke wonder. Can I ask you something, Sasuke? Choji asked hesitantly. Sasuke inclined his head slightly. Go ahead. Why'd you choose me? Sasuke didn't blink. Because I trust you. Choji froze, eyes wide. He had just been lumped into the same category as Naruto and Sakura, at least in Sasuke's mind. That alone was more honor than he expected in a lifetime. Their eyes met, and for a second, Sasuke didn't look like the cold prodigy Choji had always seen from afar. He looked like someone who genuinely meant what he said. Choji was the first to look away. Sasuke slid a form across the desk. This relinquishes my authority while I'm gone. Sign here, and try not to burn the place down. Choji's jaw dropped, along with his pen. Was that a joke? From Sasuke. Hey, why yeah, I'll try not to do that, he chuckled weakly as he scribbled his name. So, how's Sakura doing? Sasuke's expression stiffened. Fine. Choji winced. Heard she's having lunch with the Cage today. Ino told me. Sasuke gritted his teeth and ran his hand through his hair. Still, he wouldn't be deterred. I'm sure it's just about travel plans, Choji added quickly, trying to douse the fire in Sasuke's eyes. Sasuke gave a curt nod. Ah, she talks about you to Ino all the time, Choji continued, desperate now. You two must have a really great relationship. Sasuke raised an eyebrow. Had he missed something? Was Choji misinformed? Or just an idiot? I mean, Choji backpedaled, sweating, you look good together. Sasuke drummed his fingers against the wood. He supposed they did. You're lucky, Choji said quietly. To have Sakura as a girlfriend. Sasuke didn't correct him. Couldn't. Actually, because just then, the office doors slammed open. Tamari stormed in like a sandstorm with Shikamaru dragging behind her, clearly wishing he were anywhere else. Tamari, Shikamaru sighed, rubbing his temples, you need to calm down. Stress isn't good for the baby. I can't calm down, she snapped, pointing accusingly at Sasuke. I can't believe you're the one guarding my medic nin. If anything happens to Sakura, I will kill you. She's the one who's going to deliver my baby. Sasuke stared blankly at her. He had been about to ask how she knew, but then remembered, of course. She was Gaara's sister. His patience was thinning with the entire Sand sibling trio. Shikamaru sighed again, trying to rein her in. They say some pregnant women can be a bit temperamental. Tamari whipped her head toward him. Don't blame this on the hormones, lazy ass. She turned her glare back on Sasuke. I moved to Konoha for the best damn medic in the 5 great nations to deliver this child, and by the gods, she will not die on some rogue mission. Sasuke leaned back, slightly disturbed. So this is what pregnant women were like. Maybe rebuilding the Uchiha clan could wait a bit. I mean it, Uchiha, she growled, shaking off Shikamaru's grip. If anything happens to her, I'll bury you with my fan. Shikamaru yawned. You can't. He's the last Uchiha. You think I care? Shikamaru turned to Choji. Ask her about dinner so we can go. Like the wind she wielded, Temari's mood shifted. Choji, she said sweetly. You're coming over for dinner tonight, right? Choji, whiplashed and wide-eyed, gave a tiny nod. Why yes. Great, she chirped. Then narrowed her eyes at Sasuke. You're not invited. Sasuke clicked his tongue. I'm busy anyway. Shikamaru scratched his chin with a knowing smirk. Busy with what? Sasuke turned away. No response. Oh ho. Tamari said, eyes gleaming. I know. He's gonna ask Sakura on a date. Sasuke's brow twitched. He really shouldn't have said anything. Choji and Shikamaru exchanged stunned glances. Sasuke, asking someone out. That was a headline-worthy event. But the faintest flush on Sasuke's cheeks said it all. Choji, Sasuke said coolly, standing and slinging his satchel over his shoulder, wrap up for the day. As he passed the bickering couple, he paused only briefly at the double doors. I've got reservations to make. And with that, the doors swung closed behind him. Thank you, Sakura said, bowing politely, though her cheeks still burned with residual blush. Gaara gave a faint smile as he spooned a bite of curry into his mouth. Sakura, You've thanked me 36 times now. He chewed slowly. I think the first one was sufficient. Sakura let out an awkward laugh, her hand tugging at the hem of her skirt as she looked away. Sorry, it's just. Her gaze dropped to the table. You always seem to catch me off guard. Gaara stilled at the flutter in his chest, inhaling deeply to temper the sensation. No, he had to stay grounded. She was the Uchiha's future wife, not some wandering possibility. His role was clear: provide a last resort, not become temptation. Right, he said calmly, casting a brief glance at Kankuro, who leaned against the frame of the door to their private room. I've been informed you'll have 3 guards with you during your stay. Team 7, Sakura confirmed, lifting a spoonful of soup to her lips. Naruto, Sai, and Sasuke. The soup was too hot, so she set the spoon down again, lips pursed in a soft frown. Gaara sipped his tea. Then it's likely we won't have much time to speak alone. Sakura nodded slowly. With her team constantly nearby and Gaara busy with his duties as Kazekage, they'd have little opportunity for private discussion. I mentioned before, we'll need to meet at night. His voice lowered slightly. When we arrive in Suna in 3 days, I'll be on my balcony at midnight each night, for about an hour. Come if you can. Sakura curled an eyebrow and smirked. Who do you think I am? Gaara blinked. I can slip past my teammates without them even noticing, she said confidently. I'm stronger than I look. A soft chuckle escaped him, and he pressed a fist to his mouth to contain it. Ah. Don't laugh at me. Sakura huffed playfully, wagging a finger. Just because you're the Kazekage doesn't mean you can look down on me. I wouldn't dare, Gaara replied, the smile reaching his eyes now as he lowered his hand. They fell into a quiet rhythm after that, eating between bits of soft conversation, until Sakura said gently, it must be a little lonely. Gaara glanced up. I mean, with Tamari, she added quickly. You two are really close, right? With her moving to Konoha, I imagine that's hard. Gaara exhaled slowly. Yes, it was a change. Tamari had been a constant presence, family, advisor, protector. Watching her leave to build a new life with Shikamaru had felt like a punch in the gut. It was bittersweet. On one hand, his sister was happy. On the other hand, she was leaving the only home she had known all her life. I'll take care of her, though, Sakura said, meeting his gaze with steady resolve. Her and the baby. I promise. Gaara studied her face for a long moment, then offered a small smile. If things don't work out with Uchiha, I won't hold you to that promise. Sakura narrowed her eyes slightly. With all due respect, Gaara, I'm a woman of my word. No matter what happens, I'll keep that promise. Gaara arched his brow. Her conviction was striking. If you lived in Sunagakur, he said slowly, you'd be willing to return to Konoha just for her. Sakura didn't hesitate. She reached across the table and hooked her pinky with his. I promised, didn't I? Gaara looked down at their linked fingers, surprised by the gesture, and by the strange warmth it sent up his arm. This woman was so deeply loyal, so earnest. He hadn't expected this. He let his hand linger there, allowing her to be the one to pull away. And after a few moments, she did, clearly realizing what she'd done and laughing nervously. Sorry, she mumbled, rubbing the back of her neck. Gaara raised a hand, calmly cutting her off. It's fine. His voice was firm, sincere. You are free to touch me whenever you like. Sakura's eyes widened. Her chopsticks froze halfway to her mouth. Surely he didn't mean that the way it sounded. One look at his neutral expression, and she relaxed, just slightly. Still, she wished someone else would say that to her. Someone with black hair, sharp eyes, and a scowl that made her heart race. Ah, Gaara added quickly, clearing his throat and blushing ever so slightly, because you're a dear friend. All right, Sakura agreed, her voice higher than usual. A tense silence stretched between them. So, the Uchiha, Gaara said eventually, sipping his tea. Is progress going well? Sakura's hand twitched slightly. I think so. Gaara noted the hesitation in her voice. He kept his expression blank, but the way her fingers curled on her lap told him more than words could. Are you exclusive? He asked, as if inquiring about the weather. Sakura faltered. I'm not really sure. I mean, I can't imagine him being with anyone else. Gaara nodded slowly. So they weren't officially together. Something in his chest flickered at that, something he didn't like acknowledging. No, he agreed. I can't imagine that either. Sakura chewed her lip. As much as she loved every stolen moment, every kiss, every soft word, she needed clarity. She'd waited so long, and now that she was close to having what she wanted, she realized she didn't want to guess at Sasuke's feelings anymore. She wanted to know. Ino had told her not to let the physical blind her to reality. And Ino was right. It would be far too easy to give everything to Sasuke without knowing where they stood. She couldn't do that. Not anymore. Oh, Gaara, she suddenly giggled, leaning forward. You've got something. Gaara blinked as she reached across the table. With her thumb, she wiped a smear of sauce from the corner of his mouth and brought it to her lips. Spicy, she teased, licking it clean. But good. Gaara stared at her, frozen. Her fingers had lingered just long enough to send a buzz through his entire body. He glanced toward the open door, where Kankuro stood sentinel, and just caught the tail end of dark hair slipping out of sight. Uchiha Sasuke. Gaara's eyes narrowed slightly. What, exactly, was Sasuke doing in Kobe? Uchiha Sasuke lit the candles with a flick of his fingers, the simple fire-style jutsu casting a warm glow across the lakefront dock. He frowned as the old wood creaked beneath his weight and shifted the bento box slightly to the left, then again to the right. He huffed, annoyed that something as simple as a picnic setup could throw him off balance. But he wanted it to be perfect. The setting sun spilled gold and crimson across the waters of the Uchiha Lake, and he knew Sakura would be home soon. Originally, he'd planned to take her to Kobe and ask her over for dinner. Everything had been meticulously timed, until he arrived early and saw her laughing with Gaara in the restaurant's private room, her hand brushing his, her face flushed. He had turned and walked out without saying a word, leaving the host bewildered. So instead of wallowing, Sasuke did what he always did, took action. He hit the market with the same intensity he used in battle and bought ingredients he thought she would like. While he wasn't a chef, he could at least cook something good enough for the Queen of Fist. Sasuke. Sakura's voice drifted down the dock, hesitant. I saw the light from the kitchen, so I came out here and, what is all this? He turned. Candlelight wrapped around her silhouette, and for a moment, time slowed. Her hair glowed rose gold in the sunset, her eyes wide and unsure. She looked breathtaking. He gestured for her to come closer. When she did, he gently poked her forehead. I felt like eating outside, he said flatly. Sakura blinked, then blushed. Would you mind if I joined you? He raised an eyebrow as if to say, who the hell do you think this is for? I don't care, he said, sitting down and opening the neatly packed bento. Sakura smiled softly and knelt beside him. Arigato. She watched him curiously as he handed her an onigiri without a word. She took it, biting into it gently. How was your day? She asked. Good. Sasuke mentally facepalmed. He was shit at this. What was he even doing? He glanced at her. Did she even know this was a date? How was yours? He added, trying to salvage it. Sakura chewed thoughtfully. Busy. I had lunch with Gaara. Sasuke's jaw tightened. Ah, we discussed the trip to Sunagakur. His eyes flicked to hers. Calm, controlled. He wasn't going to be jealous. That wasn't his style. Still. You've been spending a lot of time with Gaara, he said, his voice carefully neutral. Sakura looked up, surprised. His cheeks had the faintest tinge of red. Was this jealousy? She set her onigiri down. Gaara is a good friend, she said clearly. But I have feelings for someone else. Sasuke blinked, tension ebbing from his shoulders. That was all he needed to hear. Sakura twisted on the dock, legs curling to the side, heart pounding. Now or never. Sasuke, she said, placing her half-eaten food down. She leaned toward him, eyes serious. I need to ask you something, and I want an honest answer. He swallowed the last of his rice ball and turned to face her fully. You asked me to help rebuild your clan, she said slowly. And lately, we've become more physical. Sasuke tilted his head slightly, still not sure where she was going. I was wondering, are we? She faltered, shut her eyes, braced herself. Just say it, Sakura. A couple, she blurted, locking eyes with him. Sasuke stared at her like she'd just sprouted a second head. Was she serious? She really didn't know. To him, it was obvious. Of course they were. He didn't call her his girlfriend, not because she wasn't, but because he didn't deal in labels. She was his partner. That was enough. But clearly, she needed the words. He covered his mouth with a hand to hide his blush. Ah. The smile that bloomed on her lips made his heart skip a beat. She was too bright. He looked away. Then, she said softly, is this about rebuilding your clan or? Before she could finish, his mouth was on hers. Heat exploded in her chest. Her body leaned into his instinctively, his arms wrapping around her waist and drawing her into his lap. She straddled him without hesitation, hands tangling in his raven black hair as she deepened the kiss. Annoying, he murmured into her lips. Such stupid words. He eased her down onto the dock beside the picnic, careful not to knock anything over. His kisses were deep, unrelenting, setting her skin ablaze. She clung to him, completely lost in the heat. She could feel the thunder of his heartbeat through his chest against hers. All thoughts, all doubt, gone. His lips left hers only to trail hot kisses down her jaw and to her neck. His hand slid into her hair, tilting her head just right as his mouth found the sensitive point over her pulse. She gasped, nails digging into his back. Sasuke, she whispered, her voice trembling. He didn't stop, didn't want to. Her taste, her warmth, he was drowning in her. But as her breath hitched and her fingers curled against him, he pulled back. Not here, not yet. Panting slightly, he pressed his forehead to hers. Come, he said gruffly, glancing at the untouched food and trying to collect himself. Eat. Oh okay, Sakura stammered, cheeks as red as the sunset. Sasuke smirked at her flustered state. We can continue with dessert later. She blinked. What kind of dessert? He gave her a pointed look, that smirk turning wicked. Her eyes widened. Oh. Kankuro and Gaara stood at the village gates, silently watching and waiting for each of the members of Team 7 to arrive. They had been ready for nearly an hour, waiting for Kakashi's arrival for a formal cage send-off. Kankuro, tapping his foot and clearly impatient, jammed a pinky in his ear. Oi, he called out. Where's that lazy-ass sensei of yours? You sure he's the Hokage? Naruto grinned sheepishly. Probably got lost on the path of life again. Or trying to hit on Shizune, Sakura added with a sigh. Perhaps he is performing coitus. Sai offered helpfully. Reading old issues of Ika Ika, Sasuke muttered, arms crossed. None of the above, thank you very much, a cheerful voice called from above. Everyone looked up to see Kakashi perched on top of the village gate, hands in his pockets. He jumped down smoothly, landing next to Sakura with casual ease. I was helping an old grandmother carry her groceries. Liar, Sasuke muttered under his breath. That's a load of bull. Naruto barked. Mo, Kaka-sensei, Sakura groaned, dragging a hand through her hair in exasperation. Kakashi chuckled awkwardly. Despite the years, despite the ranks and titles, they were still them. The bond hadn't changed, just deepened. Hold on. Wait up. All heads turned at the voice echoing down the road. Gaara stepped forward, narrowing his eyes. In the distance, a familiar blonde figure sprinted toward them, kicking up dust as she ran. Ino. Sakura said, confused. Forehead girl. Ino shouted. Hold up a sec. Sakura winced. This couldn't be good. Trailing behind Ino was Haruhi, a nervous young intern Sakura recognized from the hospital. He was panting harder than Ino, face flushed, clearly regretting his life choices. What now? Sakura muttered, already feeling a migraine forming. Ino pig, she said when the blonde finally skidded to a stop, what is it? Tell her, Ino ordered, motioning to the wide-eyed medic next to her. Haruhi fidgeted, glanced at Sakura, and then looked down at his feet. Anyo. Spit it out. Ino snapped. Sakura stepped forward, resting a hand on his shoulder gently. Hey, relax. Haruhi blurted, eyes squeezed shut, would you take me as an apprentice? I know we're about the same age, but I admire your work and. Sakura blinked, then laughed. The tension snapped in an instant. She had expected something catastrophic at the hospital, an explosion, maybe an outbreak, not this. Tucking a stray strand of pink hair behind her ear, she smiled. If you help Ino hold down the fort while I'm gone, she said with a wink, I'll think about it. Haruhi beamed. I will. I promise. Ino smirked, clapping him on the back. Told you. This guy's been pestering me for days. Mo, Ino-senpai, Haruhi muttered, his ears pink. Ah, stop teasing the poor guy, Naruto chimed in. Yeah. Ino waved him off, then turned to Sakura and pulled her into a tight hug. Come back safe, forehead. Sakura flushed, surprised by the affection. Ino. Watch your back, Ino whispered in her ear, the hug lingering just a moment longer. I will, Sakura replied as they pulled apart. Then Ino stalked over to Sai, grabbed his ear, and yanked him down. Don't you ever sneak out of bed again. And what did I tell you about kissing me before a mission? Sai blinked, then gently cupped her face and kissed her. When he pulled back, he looked genuinely thoughtful. I knew I forgot something, he said cheerfully. Ino stumbled back, dazed. Why you're impossible. Sakura sighed and turned to Gaara. We are ready now. Finally, Kankuro muttered. An hour late. Kankuro, Gaara said, a quiet reprimand. Then he stepped toward Kakashi and extended a hand. Kakashi. Kakashi stared at him down, ignored his hand, and tilted his head in acknowledgement. Take care of her, Kakashi said quietly. Get going, Kakashi said, still holding Gaara's gaze before glancing at his former students. The sooner you leave, the sooner you come back. Naruto rolled his eyes. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Kakashi nodded, expression softening. Send word when you reach Suna. 3 days. Any longer. And you'll come after us yourself, right? Sakura teased. I trust my students far too much to come after you all by myself, Kakashi said. No, I might just send Tsunade-sama your way if you dawdle too long. Sakura shivered at the thought before hugging him. We'll be fine. I promise. Good. He patted her back, then glanced at Haruhi. And you, prepare for hell. Haruhi paled instantly and ducked behind Ino. All right, Naruto said, clapping his hands together. Let's move out. Sasuke Tem, take the rear. Sai and I will cover the flanks. Kankuro. I'll lead, Kankuro said confidently. His gaze slid to Gaara and Sakura. You two take center. Sakura blinked. She hated being treated like she needed protection, but Gaara's calm expression told her this wasn't about weakness. It was about strategy. She was a medic. Center formation made sense. Still, the word useless hovered in her mind like a dark cloud. She shoved it aside. They had a mission to complete. And deep down, she knew. She needed to go to Suna. And she needed to be ready for whatever came next. Sorry, Gaara said quietly as they moved swiftly through the canopy, the breeze rustling leaves in their wake. I realize this must be different for you. Sakura let out a breathy, uncomfortable laugh, brushing a few strands of hair from her face as she leapt to the next branch. Yeah, a little. She glanced back at Sasuke, who was trailing behind them, ever watchful. I've gotten used to protecting others, not being protected. Her eyes flicked back to Gaara, the faintest shadow passing over her expression. I worked hard to become strong enough to defend both myself and my teammates. Gaara caught that look, the sadness in her eyes that disappeared as quickly as it came. He pushed off another branch, keeping pace beside her. He remembered her from their genin days, the trembling girl caught between two powerhouses, hidden behind Naruto's unrelenting optimism and Sasuke's sharp focus. Back then, she had been a liability. Now, she moved with the grace and strength of a seasoned kunoichi. He respected that. Why did you choose to become a medical ninja? He asked after a beat, curious. Sakura ducked under a low branch, then somersaulted gracefully into the next leap. I was tired of watching Naruto and Sasuke get hurt for my sake. Her voice was softer now, more vulnerable. I wanted to be strong, someone they could count on. Tsunade Shisho gave me that path. She smiled, small and wistful, then tilted her chin toward the Uchiha, watching them like a hawk. I spent so long staring at their backs. I wanted them to see mine, wanted them to see me. Gaara allowed himself the hint of a smile. Sasuke certainly had a clear view of her back now, and if Gaara wasn't mistaken, the Uchiha was paying attention. And you? Sakura asked, glancing sideways. When did you decide to become Kazekage? Let me guess. Naruto had something to do with it. Gaara's cheeks colored faintly, his eyes focusing straight ahead. I wanted to be acknowledged by my village. I wanted to be a different kind of leader than my father. Sakura smiled at that. And now that you've become Kazekage, how does it feel, accomplishing what you set out to do? Gaara met her gaze, calm and unwavering. Probably the same as how you feel. She chuckled softly. Maybe. But I've still got one more goal left. Her eyes slid again to Sasuke, a flicker of warmth in her expression. She tried to suppress her smile, recalling the night before. They hadn't had much time, just enough to hold each other and kiss until they couldn't breathe. They hadn't gone any further, though the temptation was real. Both of them knew that if they crossed that line, they wouldn't make it to Suna. She winced slightly. Honestly, making love to Sasuke. She doubted she'd be able to walk the next day, let alone travel across the land of wind. Still, she loved their intimacy, the quiet moments of honesty it brought. The way he held her like she mattered. Like he didn't want to let go. Gaara, watching her from the corner of his eye, turned his gaze back toward Sasuke. The Uchiha seemed calmer than the day before, less tense, less stormy. Gaara had been surprised to see him show up in Kobe while he and Sakura were having lunch. More surprised to see him leave just as abruptly. Whatever storm had passed over Sasuke seemed to have cleared, for now. We should stop soon, Gaara said, raising his voice slightly to reach Kankuro up ahead. Ah, Kankuro called back. There's a village about 5 kilometers out. We can grab lunch there. He looked over his shoulder at Sakura with a teasing grin. Think you can last that long, princess? Sakura snorted. TCH. Please. I could go another 10. Kankuro chuckled. Ever since Sakura had saved his life, he'd felt a kind of quiet loyalty toward her. Extracting the poison from his body had been no easy feat, and yet she had done it. Sakura was tough. Way tougher than she looked. And knowing a little about the mess surrounding her and Sasuke only made him more inclined to look out for her. Even if it did mean dealing with the Uchiha's heated glares stabbing into the back of his skull. For your next goal, Gaara said after a moment, his voice softer again, I'd like to help, if I can. Sakura blinked, touched by the sincerity in his tone. She shook her head gently. It's okay, Gaara. It's not really something anyone else can help with. He nodded, understanding. A part of him was relieved. His growing feelings for the kunoichi made it complicated. The idea of helping her find happiness with someone else, especially Sasuke, wasn't something he felt ready to confront. Even so, he said honestly, I hope you find your happiness. Sakura smiled, something tender and wistful blooming in her chest. Me too, Gaara. Me too. Uchiha Sasuke leaned casually against the doorframe of the restaurant, one shoulder propped as he closed his eyes, smirking to himself. Last night was incredible. He and Sakura were finally together, really together, and they'd spent most of the night tangled in one another's arms. Now, they were on a mission side by side. Romance, in the shinobi world, didn't get more poetic than pressing kunai to an enemy's throat with your lover at your back. The murmurs of passing villagers reached his ears, whispers and sideways glances. He didn't need to look to know they were staring. He was Uchiha Sasuke, an infamous shinobi of Konoha, and more importantly, one of the strongest. That didn't mean he enjoyed being ogled like some kind of celebrity. One kid, in particular, was really starting to get on his nerves. Sasuke cracked one eye open. The boy was still there, gawking like he'd just seen a mythical creature come to life. Sasuke let both eyes snap open, the Sharingan flaring for half a second. The kid bolted. Sasuke clicked his tongue in satisfaction. Served him right. Sai appeared then, carrying a small bag of onigiri. He passed one to Sasuke and leaned against the opposite side of the doorway, his face its usual unreadable mask. They seem close, Sai said casually. Sasuke didn't need clarification. He chewed his rice ball slowly, eyes narrowing just a touch. Gaara and Sakura, Sai added when Sasuke didn't respond. He exhaled through his nose, taking another bite like he hadn't a care in the world. Sai tilted his head, curious. It doesn't bother you. Sasuke swallowed. They're not on a date. They're having tea. Sai blinked. Together. Sasuke glanced through the open doorway. Sure enough, Gaara and Sakura sat across from each other, sipping their drinks. Naruto and Kankuro were at a nearby table, chattering away, but the distance between them was enough to make Sasuke frown slightly. Still, it wasn't a date. Doesn't look like anything, he muttered. But Ino believes it could be something, Sai said, fishing around in his pocket. She gave me instructions to keep an eye on Sakura and report back. Something about not trusting redheads. Sasuke raised a brow. She said that. Sai pulled out a crumpled sheet of paper and read, "If that bastard tries anything, tell Sasuke to step up his game. If he loses to a guy who plays in a sandbox, I will kill him." He looked up. Ino's handwriting. Very firm strokes. Sasuke exhaled hard, somewhere between a scoff and a laugh. Figures. Even Sakura's best friend had doubts about his ability to maintain the relationship. That stung more than he'd like to admit. He shifted, peering back through the doorway. Sakura smiled at something Gaara said, soft and easy, and Sasuke felt a flicker of something uncomfortably warm in his chest. She's not going anywhere, he said, almost to himself. I believe you, Sai said encouragingly. Even if you lack certain physical assets. Sasuke froze, mid-chew. He turned slowly. What? Sai nodded. Ino mentioned you may overcompensate with brooding intensity. It's nothing to be ashamed of. Shut it, Sasuke growled, glaring. Sai offered him a thumbs up, the kind Naruto always gave. No worries. I respect you even if you're emotionally constipated. Before Sasuke could throttle him, Naruto stuck his head out the restaurant door. Oi, everything good out here? Sasuke muttered, fucking fantastic. Sai, ever helpful, added, Sasuke may be experiencing bowel distress. I suggested a cleanse. Sasuke's fist slammed into Sai's jaw. The man stumbled back, blinking, but still smiling that infuriatingly fake smile like he'd just received a warm compliment. You're a sadist, Sasuke grumbled. Technically, I'm just curious, Sai replied, brushing dust off his shoulder. Knock it off, Naruto said, stepping between them. Don't push Sasuke. He'll kick your ass. Ah, sorry, Sai said, raising both hands. Didn't mean to expose his personal issues. Sasuke glared at him, arms folded, already regretting every life decision that had led to this moment. Then the door opened, and Sakura stepped out into the light. All set, she said cheerfully, brushing her hair over her shoulder. Her eyes met Sasuke's for a brief second, softening in a way that made his heart kick once, hard. He smirked and fell into step beside her. Let's go, he murmured. Sai leaned toward Naruto. See. Constipated face. Sasuke didn't even look back. One more word, and I'll feed you that little red book of yours. Sorry, Gaara said, the fire crackling at his feet. Shadows danced across his face as he gazed into the flames. We won't be staying at an inn tonight. Sakura stretched, her joints popping softly as she yawned. It's fine, Gaara. She glanced toward the edge of the campsite where Sasuke leaned silently against a tree, arms folded, his gaze lost in the night. Team 7's used to roughing it in the woods. Normally we'd stop somewhere with a roof, Kankuro added, propping a boot against the base of a tree opposite Sasuke. But considering the company we're keeping, it's safer if we stay off the radar tonight. But I was looking forward to the bathhouses, Naruto groaned, slumping forward with an exaggerated sigh. We'll stop in a Megakure tomorrow, Kankuro said, shooting Naruto a sidelong glance. You can get your bathhouse fix there. Naruto's mood immediately lifted. All right, he said with a grin, giving Gaara a light nudge on the arm. Nothing like a hot soak to take the edge off a mission. I'm going to get more firewood, Sasuke announced, finally speaking up. He didn't move right away, his eyes briefly flickering to Sakura. Stay here. Sakura watched him go, her brows pulling together in concern. She hated this part, the quiet departures into the woods under the guise of a simple chore. Too many ambushes had started like that. Too many teammates had walked off and never returned. But this was Sasuke. Uchiha Sasuke didn't die collecting firewood. He was too strong. Too stubborn. Still, she shifted uneasily on the log. Oh, Sakura-chan, Naruto suddenly said, standing and brushing dirt from his pants. Want to go for a walk? I want to talk to you about something real quick. She blinked at him, caught off guard. Oh, but Sasuke. Naruto gave her a look. One of those serious, silent, you know this is important kind of looks. Of course, she said at last. Naruto glanced at Sai. Stay here and keep an eye on Gaara. TCH, Kankuro scoffed. Gaara's fine with me around. Enough, Gaara said calmly. He rose to his feet out of courtesy, nodding at Sakura. Please, take your time. Sakura gave a small bow in thanks and followed Naruto into the trees. The firelight dimmed behind them as they moved deeper into the forest. Moonlight filtered through the canopy, casting broken silver across the ground. Sakura's boots crunched over twigs and dry leaves as her eyes adjusted to the low light, hopping over a fallen branch with ease. Once they were out of sight, Naruto finally slowed and turned to her. His expression was heavy with unspoken thoughts. Sakura-chan, he said softly, voice barely above a whisper, we're not just here to protect you. Sakura stopped. He rubbed the back of his neck, looking suddenly very tired. The council, they wouldn't have approved this expedition unless Sasuke was with you. They think if you get the chance, you'll bolt. And they know he's the only one who could stop you. Her lips parted slightly, her smile from earlier flickering out like a candle. Of course, Naruto always saw through her. He had always known that if it came down to it, he couldn't stop her. Not really. But Sasuke would chase her to the ends of the earth. Not because he was assigned to. Because he would. I don't blame you for wanting to run, Naruto said, arms folding across his chest. Hell, no one in the village would. Sakura's eyes narrowed, but she gave him a tired smile. You should know better by now, Naruto. I don't run anymore. Naruto shifted his weight, the leaves beneath his boots crunching faintly. Yeah, but if ever there was a time to run, Sakura-chan, this would be it. She met his gaze, steady and unflinching. I'm not going to run. You've got a window, he said, more insistently now. You could knock me out right now, disappear into the woods. No one would even notice for an hour. I said I'm not going to run. Her voice cut through the night like a kunai. She curled her hands into fists. Not from this. Not from him. Naruto stared at her, the quiet hanging between them. I've asked Gaara to help you, he said finally. Her expression softened. I know. Thank you. He nodded slowly, his usual grin replaced with something much more solemn. And I'm here too, Sakura-chan. I'll back you up, no matter what. Don't forget that. Her gaze lingered on him, full of gratitude. I won't. Haruno Sakura had no idea how she ended up like this. 1 minute, she was peacefully reading a medical textbook by the soft flicker of campfire light. Next, Uchiha Sasuke had unceremoniously dropped his head into her lap. No warning, no explanation, no permission, just flopped right down and closed his eyes like it was the most natural thing in the world. When she'd opened her mouth to ask him what the hell was going on, he'd simply muttered, "Shut up," and promptly drifted off. She glared down at his sleeping face, her brows furrowed in disbelief. The nerve. But then again, it was Sasuke. He operated on his own logic. One that rarely involved words or warnings. With a dramatic sigh, Sakura rolled her eyes and tried to go back to her reading. She was not going to let one emotionally constipated, unfairly attractive Uchiha distract her from her educational goals. She had discipline. She had focus. Although his hair really was soft. Her fingers twitched. After a moment's hesitation, she quietly closed her book and set it aside, careful not to disturb him. Leaning back against the tree trunk behind her, she slowly lifted her hand and ran her fingers through his hair. It was like silk, dark, smooth, and still slightly warm from the day's sun. A soft, almost imperceptible hum escaped him. It reverberated faintly against her thighs, sending a gentle flutter through her chest. When he slept, he looked so peaceful, so unburdened, as though all the ghosts of his past, the vengeance, the pain, the loneliness, had finally fallen away. He looked innocent. Sakura's gaze drifted across the camp. Gaara and Kankuro were sleeping nearby, their breathing even. But it was Naruto who made her raise an eyebrow. He was sprawled across both Gaara and Kankuro, one leg thrown over Gaara, the other over Kankuro, arms wrapped tightly around Gaara's gourd like it was a teddy bear. So much for the future Hokage's reputation. Sakura, a voice called quietly. She looked up to find Sai sitting nearby, keeping watch with that usual unreadable expression on his face. How'd your date with Sasuke go last night? Sakura blinked. Date. Sai tilted his head, genuinely confused. Well, it must have been awkward eating at Kobe twice in one day. Ino said you had lunch there with Gaara. Then dinner with Sasuke. Seems excessive. Sakura's brows shot up. What are you talking about? Sai blinked. Didn't Sasuke take you to Kobe? He made dinner on the dock, she said slowly, cheeks beginning to flush. I just happened to walk in on his dinner, and he let me eat with him. Sai frowned. That doesn't sound right. He squinted as if replaying something in his head. He told me he wanted to take you on a date. Maybe he just couldn't admit he was making you dinner. Sakura glanced down at the sleeping Uchiha, her fingers still threading softly through his hair. Her heart fluttered again. The candles. The quiet. The way he'd scooted over to make space for her to sit beside him. Had that actually been a date? She'd been too afraid to hope. Sigh, she whispered, warmth from Sasuke's presence sinking deeper into her lap. When Ino gets you gifts, what does she usually give you? Art supplies, Sai said without hesitation. She likes to buy me paint brushes. He smiled faintly. She says that way, whenever I paint, I'll think of her. Sakura pursed her lips. Sasuke's hobbies didn't exactly lend themselves to sentimental gift-giving. Unless there was a store selling handcrafted weapons or emotionally repressed brooding sessions, she was out of luck. What do you think would be a good gift for him? She murmured. Sai didn't miss a beat. Your virginity. Sakura glared. I would hit you if Sasuke weren't currently asleep in my lap. Sai gave a satisfied smile. Exactly why I said it. He tilted his head thoughtfully. But seriously, I don't think the gift matters. As long as it's thoughtful. He raised a finger. Sincere gifts are the most meaningful. Even someone like Sasuke can tell when something comes from the heart. Sakura looked down again at the peaceful face in her lap. I just wanted to thank him, she said quietly, for letting me live with him. Sai's eyes twinkled. In that case, a baby might be the most efficient option. Sai, she hissed, her cheeks blazing now. He grinned. Ugly. Sakura narrowed her eyes but didn't move. She wasn't taking the bait. Sai shrugged, his tone softening. In all seriousness, think about what feels right. If you'd like, when we get to Suna, I'll walk through the marketplace with you. Maybe something there will stand out. Sakura's expression softened as her irritation faded. She leaned down and pressed a kiss to Sasuke's temple, her voice warm with affection. That would be really nice. She looked up at him. Arigato, Sai. He gave her a small, genuine smile. Anytime, ugly. Uchiha Sasuke stirred as the warmth of Sakura's body pressed snugly against his own. The soft, steady rise and fall of her breathing was soothing, a lullaby more effective than silence. He tightened his arms around her instinctively, breathing in the sweet scent of her hair, something floral with a hint of the wild. He groaned quietly, a dull ache pulsing in his thighs from the previous day's relentless running. He tried shifting to find a more comfortable position, inching closer to Sakura in hopes of falling right back asleep, but the tension in his muscles refused to ease. Next time, he'd stretch properly before setting off. Still, Sakura's soft purr of approval at his attempt to cuddle made his lips curl into a rare smirk. Her head nestled into the crook between his neck and shoulder, and he let his hand trail gently down the length of her toned, but graceful arm. Her strength was subtle, tempered through years of precise chakra control and discipline. A part of him, the quiet part that rarely spoke, found deep comfort in that. From the soft crackle of a cooking fire and the faint scent of roasted fish, he could tell someone was up already. He cracked one eye open just long enough to glimpse the sun peeking through the trees and immediately closed it again with a huff of irritation. Morning had come far too soon. I've never seen them like this, Sai's voice murmured nearby, clearly entertained. Sasuke froze, his body still, his expression impassive. Was Gaara watching? Interesting, came Gaara's low, unreadable reply. Sasuke felt a flicker of Uchiha pride spark in his chest. Hell yeah, the cage could take his creepy silences and gourd of sand and eat his heart out. Sakura had chosen him, and Sasuke had no intention of letting anyone get in the way. Subtly, he pressed his nose to the crown of her head. Her hair tickled his cheek. She smelled like sunshine and herbs. Hi. No Sandman was going to sweep in and claim what was his. Seems a little weird, doesn't it? Kankuro chimed in, scratching the back of his head with an exaggerated yawn. Weird. Sasuke's brow twitched slightly, though his eyes stayed shut. Everyone. Sakura's bright voice rang across the camp. Breakfast is ready. Sasuke's eyes flew open. To his left, Naruto was sprawled beside him, snoring like a freight train. Worse, Naruto's arm was wrapped around his waist, and his leg, was draped possessively over both of Sasuke's. Sasuke's eyes twitched. He had been cuddling Naruto. I was wondering when he was going to realize. Sai sighed dramatically from where he sat, polishing his tanto. Kaden. Gokaku no Jutsu. A fireball erupted. Naruto's howl echoed through the trees as flames engulfed the seat of his pants. The next 5 minutes were chaotic. Sakura threw a water jutsu at Naruto to extinguish the flames. Kankuro and Sai restrained a feral Sasuke, who was still breathing fire in spirit if not in jutsu. Gaara sipped his tea calmly, unfazed by the drama. Once Sasuke's temper cooled and Naruto had stopped screaming, the group finally settled around the fire, each with a plate of roasted fish and wild rice, courtesy of Sakura's early morning hunt. Naruto sulked as Sakura gently applied ointment to his scorched backside. Seriously, Sasuke, did you have to set me on fire? I thought it was romantic, Kankuro muttered with a smirk. Sakura giggled, her cheeks pink, trying, and failing, to stifle her laughter. Sasuke shot her a look, heat rising in his ears. Wonderful. Now he was not only humiliated in front of her but also in front of Gaara. Things couldn't possibly get any worse. You are quite the cuddler, Sai said thoughtfully, completely ignoring the murderous aura emanating from Sasuke. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I know how you both enjoy your, private time. Shut it, Sasuke growled, stabbing at his rice with his chopsticks like it had personally offended him. He ate in silence for a few more moments, then abruptly stood and dusted off his pants. Enough. Let's move. If we keep pace, we'll reach Omegakure in 8 hours. The rest of the team groaned, reluctant to leave the comfort of breakfast, but no one dared challenge the sharp edge in Sasuke's voice. Naruto rubbed his singed backside with a wince. Remind me never to fall asleep next to that bastard again. Sakura only smiled, eyes lingering on Sasuke's retreating form. A soft, secret smile curved her lips. The Uchiha may have had the emotional range of a brick wall, but he was her brick wall. And she wouldn't have it any other way. Are they always that close? Gaara asked hesitantly, leaping to land beside Sakura. Naruto and Sasuke, I mean. Sakura laughed awkwardly. She could practically feel the seething aura behind her, Sasuke's chakra flaring just enough to betray his irritation. He must have been absolutely livid after this morning. Waking up with Naruto practically glued to his side couldn't have been a pleasant surprise, especially with Kankuro making jokes about it all morning. She frowned. No, Sakura said, catching her balance on a thick branch before bounding to the next. Naruto just sneaks into his bed when Hinata's not around. Gaara nodded thoughtfully, adjusting the gourd strapped to his back. And you and Sasuke, are you always that close? Sakura stumbled mid-jump. She turned the trip into a quick flip off a nearby trunk and landed smoothly, though her cheeks flared with color. She dared a glance at Gaara, then quickly looked away, scratching her cheek. You were still figuring things out. We only just started dating, so no, not really. Gaara's teal gaze lingered on her, watching the blush rise in her face and the tension in her posture. His heart kicked up, and not because of the high-speed pursuit through the trees. The kunoichi hadn't caused his heart to beat so hard during their younger years, so why now? He looked back toward the silently brooding Uchiha trailing behind them. His chest ached, and it confused him. Gaara had made a decision long ago, to understand and embrace his emotions, whatever they may be. Feelings were no longer burdens but bridges. And whatever this was that stirred inside him whenever he looked at Sakura, he needed to face it. Their time together was limited, and the sight of her with Sasuke made something inside him twist. I see, Gaara said finally, his voice soft but grounded. Sakura, still visibly flustered, quickly tried to shift the focus away from herself. How about you? Anyone you're interested in? Gaara looked at her flatly. She sweat dropped. Right. What kind of question was that? Never mind, she said with a nervous laugh. So, are you looking forward to going back to Sunagakure? He nodded once. Matsuri will be happy. Sakura chuckled. Matsuri, Gaara's quiet, weapon-wary student, was sweet and hopelessly devoted. Unrequited love was hard to watch. Sakura understood that ache far too well. She glanced at Sasuke again, remembering how long it took for him to acknowledge her feelings. Poor Matsuri. Maybe she'd talk to her when they arrived in Suna, offer a little guidance, kunoichi to kunoichi. A sharp whistle cut through the air, shattering her thoughts. Something zipped past her neck and struck her communicator, sending it tumbling to the forest floor. Instincts flaring, she darted back. Watch it. Sasuke's voice cut through the chaos, Mangekyo Sharingan spinning wildly. We're being ambushed. Sakura and Gaara broke apart, leaping into the surrounding trees as a hail of shuriken tore through where they'd stood moments ago. Sakura unsheathed a kunai, eyes narrowing. They were nearing a megakure. This wasn't a good place to be caught off guard. Sakura, Sasuke barked into his communicator, do you copy? Static. She grimaced. The hit had disabled hers. Naruto. Sasuke continued. Loud and clear, Naruto murmured, crouched low behind a bush. Sai. Yo, came the lazy reply. Sai pressed against the base of a trunk, scanning the trees. But Gaara and Kankuro were missing. Sakura cursed inwardly. This wasn't good. She couldn't see either of them. Still, she waited. Sasuke would have a plan. If not him, then Naruto surely would. Pressed against the trunk of an ancient tree, she steadied her breath. Movement flickered behind her. She reacted on instinct, crouching low and launching herself into the air. She spun with practiced precision, chakra surging to the ball of her foot. Her kick landed squarely in a gut, and the figure burst into water. A clone, she muttered. Sakura's eyes widened. Wait, she called, alarmed. Sasuke, hearing her voice, immediately changed course. His body blurred as he descended from his perch, caught a branch, and flipped to land smoothly in front of her. His eyes swept her quickly. No wounds, no blood, no distress. Satisfied, he gave her a curt nod. Sasuke, she breathed, disbelief in her voice, they're not our enemy. They're not your enemy. A deep voice echoed from the shadows. Then they're underestimating us. We won't be beaten again, another growled. Sakura smirked, kunai still in hand. Then show yourselves. Let's get this over with. Sasuke shot her a side glance. He never understood why she and Naruto insisted on provoking their opponents. But the enemy obliged. 3 figures emerged from the branches above, shrouded in mist and rain. Sasuke's eyes narrowed, recognition dawning. Oboro, Sakura said coolly, her eyes scanning the trio, Mubi, and Kagari. Sasuke blinked, impressed. He remembered their faces from the Chunin exams, but hadn't bothered with names. Naruto popped out from cover, grinning cheekily. Yo, it's been a while, huh? Mubi shot a look at Oboro. Don't go picking fights with old friends. You wanna start another war? Oboro grumbled, folding his arms. He glanced at Sakura and then away. I just wanted to see if you remembered us. Sakura smiled gently. I do. Ah, Mubi replied, just as Gaara and Kankuro reappeared from the shadows. Kankuro scowled. Seriously? This was your idea of a reunion? Screw all of you. Kankuro, Gaara said sharply. Then he turned to face Team Oboro properly. While I understand the desire to be acknowledged, initiating conflict was unnecessary. His eyes gleamed with subtle amusement. Sakura remembered you just fine without theatrics. Sakura beamed. Nay, why don't you join us? We're headed toward a megakure. Oboro and Kagari started protesting immediately, but Mubi raised a hand. We've got our own mission. We're headed east. Sakura nodded. Then good luck. Her voice softened as she glanced back at Oboro. And sorry. Back then. Oboro didn't ask what she meant. He understood. His expression twisted into a sneer, but it lacked venom. Of course I remember. We got crushed by you. Team 7. The so-called legends. He smirked behind his mask. Who could possibly beat you? Who could possibly defeat you? Sakura frowned at the thought of Oboro's words as she undressed in the women's changing room. They had finally made it to a megakure after a long day of travel, complete with a wrong turn courtesy of Kankuro and Sasuke's near-legendary irritation. Naruto had whined half the way through the gates about needing a bath, and after relentless pestering, they'd all agreed on stopping at one of the city's renowned bathhouses. As they entered, the owners, clearly informed ahead of time, had already flipped the closed sign and cleared out the place. Apparently, being one of the pillars of peace in the shinobi world came with unexpected VIP treatment. Sakura supposed there were perks to being a hero, but with those perks came pressure. Everyone expected her to be perfect. She sighed heavily, yanking off her shirt and tossing it into the locker. Her skirt followed, then her lace-trimmed underwear. The clang of the locker door slamming shut echoed her mood. Of course I was beaten by you all. The memory of Obero's words stung more than she wanted to admit. Like she was some untouchable monument now. As if the girl who had once failed the bell test wasn't still somewhere inside her. Sakura bit her bottom lip, grabbed her robe, and stepped through the sliding door into the women's side of the bathhouse. The air was heavy with steam and the scent of sakura blossoms. She shrugged off the robe and let it drop, forgotten, as she made her way into the steaming water. The warmth enveloped her instantly, muscle by muscle, washing away fatigue. She submerged herself, let the heat wrap around her, and then surfaced slowly, pushing her wet hair back from her face. And screamed. "What the hell, Sasuke?" She shrieked, ducking low behind the nearest rock. Her heart slammed against her ribs. "This is the women's bath." Sasuke stood near the entrance, steam swirling around his lean form, a towel slung low on his hips. His expression was maddeningly calm. "Someone has to guard you." "From what? Bathhouse perverts. You're the only one here." He shrugged like she hadn't just caught him in enemy territory. "It was either me or Naruto." Well, that shut her up. Still fuming, Sakura peeked at him from behind her stone fortress. Sasuke, naturally, looked utterly unfazed. He started descending the steps into the water. She threw up her hands. Wait. I'm not wearing anything." His eyes flicked toward the discarded towel on the ground, then back to her. With exaggerated politeness, he bent to pick it up, folding it over one shoulder like some kind of smug, stoic lifeguard. Then he stepped into the bath, stopping at the shallow end, just close enough to be a problem. He extended a hand. "If you want this," he said, his voice low, smug, "you'll have to come get it." Sakura sputtered. Her entire face felt like it had caught fire. There was no way she was wading across a bathhouse butt naked to take anything from him. Not when they were still figuring out how to hold hands without short-circuiting. This was Uchiha Sasuke, her partner, her boyfriend, technically. But intimacy between them was still a fragile dance. Every brush of fingers and stolen glance was a careful negotiation. "I'll faint from the heat before I do that," she grumbled under her breath. "If you faint," he replied smoothly, like he had access to her inner monologue, "I'll just have to come over and carry you out." Sakura swore under her breath. Of course, he would. He was impossible, insufferable, and hot. So hot it made her want to scream again, but not for the same reasons. Fine, she muttered, steeling herself. "Just turn around." He gave her a look. One of those raised eyebrows, really. Expressions, but eventually sighed and did as she asked, facing the opposite direction. His bare back flexed slightly with the movement, muscles rippling under pale skin, and she had to bite the inside of her cheek to keep herself from staring. She waded toward him cautiously, like he was baiting a trap. In truth, he was. Sasuke's smirk grew as he heard the gentle splash of her footsteps. She was delicate like one of those festival goldfish, slippery, bright, and impossible to catch unless you moved just right. The memory of the Kingyo Sukui game with Gaara flashed across his mind. Patience and precision. That was what it took. So as Sakura slowly emerged from the water, her chest fully exposed in the shallow end and water dripping from her nipples, he waited carefully for her to try and take the towel from over his shoulder. He felt her trembling, wet fingers grip the white material, and then he struck. With one swift movement, his lips caught hers, briefly looking into his prey's panicked eyes as he did so. He wrapped his arm around her waist. He felt her flesh against his skin, feeling her moan into his mouth as she shivered against him. Heat rushed and pulled at her lower abdomen. Sakura had forgotten the #1 shinobi rule, never be caught unaware. By the time she realized what was happening, Sasuke had snatched her in his arms. She moaned in his throat, her hands sliding up his wet back and behind his neck to latch themselves deeply into his silky black hair. He felt her nipples pucker against his chest, and his thick length grew hard against her smooth thigh. He still couldn't get enough of her, though. He easily lifted her leg to hook it against his waist. She could feel him now, all right. His hard, thick cock throbbed against her stomach and she felt a primitive urge shake her to the core. He drew her closer to him, if even possible. Sasuke-kun, she panted, as he parted with her lips to lift her up and pay more attention to her delectable breasts. If you don't like it, say so, Sasuke growled unapologetically, otherwise, I'm going to continue. He nipped at the porcelain skin, pressing his cheek against the tender mounds of flesh. Sakura. He let her slide back down, her chest touching every bit of his neck, shoulders, arm, and torso in the process until they were intimately wrapped together once more. She withdrew from him, and he followed, backing her into a corner in the process. He looked at her, waiting for her to protest. She held one hand to her lips, the other around her torso. But still, she did not protest. He leaned forward, letting her back into the rock she had hidden behind, before he let his mouth cover hers. He felt her response, passionate and flowing through him, begging for control. She was not one to be dominated for long. He smirked against her lips. She wanted control. Then fine. She would have control. He backed away, satisfied with the glossy gaze of hers as he did so. The trance did not last long. She brought her lips to his ear. A small, pink tongue flicked out and teased the tip. Sasuke smirked, forcing himself to keep still when all he wanted to do was drown her in passion. Her teeth grazed his lobe as she gently nibbled it. Release. And then, a hot, wet tongue tracing little patterns over it. Her red cheek, pressed lightly against his own, jostled slightly with the movements of her head. Sakura began to pull away, but only got so far as to let Sasuke have full access to her lips. He never wanted her to stop. Sakura grinned against his mouth. Is this what having complete control over an Uchiha felt like? Well, Sakura liked it. She quickly pushed him away and slid herself onto the rock, embarrassment gone and a lust for power in its place. She crossed her legs, letting Sasuke take all of her glory in. She stared down at him with one brow arched. She smirked. Ino was right. Being naked in front of him would come with time. Who knew all it took was a bathhouse to get her out of her shell? So she sat atop the rock like the queen she was and stared down at her loyal avenger. Sasuke looked up at her, a cocky grin on his face. Sakura. Hey. He took her thighs and pulled her closer to him, yanking her legs apart in the process. Her eyes widened in surprise. Sasuke looked up at her, making sure that this was what she wanted. She swallowed and bent her head slightly down. He had her permission. Sasuke placed his hand on her hips and forced her legs wider. Sakura tried not to show how nervous she was, but Sasuke could feel the pounding of her heart through her skin. He slowly brought his mouth to her entrance and coitus. Eek! Sakura screamed as she flung herself back into the bath water, kicking Sasuke in the face as she did so. Oh my, Sai said as he stood at the entranceway, I was just coming to check on you too. I didn't mean to. No, no, Sakura squealed, yanking the towel that had long been forgotten and was floating away from her. Why, you're fine. She shot a glare at him. You didn't see anything, did you? Sai looked thoughtful. Not if you didn't want me to. You did, Sasuke hissed, covering his bloody nose and his Sharingan blasting. Sai smiled. Shanaru. I can't believe you, Sasuke hissed, grabbing Sai by the collar as they stood just outside Sakura's hotel room. His voice was low, dangerous. Idiot. Sai blinked, caught off guard. I said I was sorry. Sasuke cut him off with a growl. He was pissed. No, enraged. He had finally gotten Sakura to lower her guard, to give in to that long simmering tension between them, and Sai of all people had to come in like the clueless idiot he was. What the hell was this? Some secret shinobi organization. The Cock Block Committee. Was Sai the chairman, and Naruto his right-hand man? Sai bowed deeply, for what felt like the 100th time. I truly didn't realize the two of you were intending to perform coitus in that particular area. I didn't think. Exactly, Sasuke snapped in a dangerous whisper. You didn't think. Sai looked at the floor, guilt practically radiating off him. His voice dropped. I truly regret it. Naruto appeared beside them, rubbing the back of his neck and clasping them on the shoulder. Cut him some slack, Sasuke, he murmured. It was an accident. He didn't know. Sasuke shrugged Naruto off and shot him a withering glare. Naruto met it evenly until Sasuke exhaled heavily and let the tension drain from his shoulders. Just knock next time, he gritted out. Sai straightened and offered a hopeful smile. Naruto grinned. Sasuke, he said slowly, trying to make amends. If Sakura were to offer you something, anything, what would you want? Sasuke raised a brow, ready to say coitus, sarcastically and venomously, but paused when he saw the genuine curiosity in Sai's expression. He closed his eyes, rubbed the bridge of his nose, and answered quietly, anything. As long as it's from her. Sai leaned back against the doorway, nodding as if that confirmed something for him. He tilted his head thoughtfully. You love her, don't you? The teasing was gone from his voice now, just open honesty. Sasuke's response was simple. Ah. Naruto grinned and scratched his cheek. I knew it. Sai frowned. Then, why can't you say it? Sasuke clenched his fist. His voice dropped. Because if I do. He hesitated, the words sticking in his throat. I'll lose her. Naruto's face turned solemn. Why would you think that? Sasuke didn't look at either of them. His voice was low, hollow. The last people I told I loved died. A silence fell over them. Heavy. Sai swallowed hard. The weight of Sasuke's past, the blood, the pain, the loss, hung in the air like smoke. It spilled from him now, quiet and suffocating. Why are you telling me this? Sai asked softly. Sasuke finally cracked a smirk and opened one eye, the usual irritation back in his gaze. Because you're annoying. Sai tilted his head, puzzled. Was that sarcasm? Some strange form of bonding? He glanced at Naruto, then back at Sasuke. There was something different about this, about how close they were all becoming. And that unfamiliar warmth that had started to bloom in his chest. His heart skipped. He pressed 2 fingers to his pulse. His face flushed. Oh no. Sasuke, Sai blurted, eyes wide and cheeks turning crimson. I love you. Sasuke nearly tripped over his own feet. What the hell? I think I'm in love with you. Sai panicked, fanning his face. But I already proposed to Ino and, what are we going to do? Sasuke snapped. Before Sai could spiral further, Naruto raised his fist and thumped it squarely against Sai's head. It's called brotherly love, you idiot. Sai clutched his head. Brotherly love. Sasuke rolled his eyes so hard it was a miracle they didn't stay that way. Ah, same feeling I get when I look at Naruto. Sai blinked, visibly processing. His expression softened as understanding dawned on him. This bond, it wasn't romantic. It was family. A found family forged in fire, sarcasm, and shared pain. He turned back to Sasuke with a gentle smile. So you are in love with each other. Shut it. Sasuke and Naruto barked in unison. Shoot. Sakura whispered, brushing the cold sweat from her brow with a trembling hand. I thought the nightmares were over. Her breath came in shallow gasps, and her pulse thudded in her ears like war drums. Her damp hair clung to her neck, her skin chilled despite the warmth of the room. She wiped her tear-streaked cheeks and pulled her knees to her chest, curling into herself atop the hotel bed. It was always the same nightmare. Like some cursed reel of film stuck on repeat, the night Sasuke left. The way the shadows had swallowed him whole. The way his words, thank you, had felt like a knife. Who did that? who responded to a desperate love confession with cold gratitude and a silent knockout. No wonder it still haunted her. But what hurt more were the dreams that pretended to be kind. The ones that whispered promises of Sasuke returning to her in the dead of night, back when he was running with Orochimaru, with Team Taka. Those dreams had once filled her chest with fluttering hope. Until she'd wake to silence. Emptiness. Reality. There was nothing more cruel than hope followed by nothing. She exhaled shakily and lay back against the pillow, forcing herself to inhale again and then exhale. Steady. Calm. She was older now. Stronger. A Jonin. A healer. A survivor. She could handle this. He was back. Sasuke had come back to the village. He wasn't running anymore. They were together now, in an actual relationship. She wasn't chasing shadows. But still, her brow furrowed. Was it enough? She sighed and ran her fingers through her pink hair, tugging slightly at the roots. Her thoughts wouldn't quiet down. With a frustrated grunt, she flung her pillow into the air, letting it land with a soft thump on her face. She lay there for a moment, face buried, inhaling the faint scent of lavender from the hotel sheets. Then, with a groan, she rolled onto her stomach, dragging the pillow down and hugging it to her chest. Her cheek pressed into the soft cotton as her mind spiraled deeper. Sure, it was everything she thought she wanted. Sasuke. Her. Together. But questions still clung to her like morning dew. When had he started to love her back? Did he really mean it when he asked her to help rebuild his clan? And why now, after all these years, was he suddenly reaching for her? She clutched the pillow tighter. Why had he never said anything before? Why had she spent so many sleepless nights doubting her worth, wondering if she was strong enough, worthy enough? The wind howled faintly through the crack in the window. She shivered and yanked the blanket higher, cocooning herself against the cold. Even knowing Sasuke was just outside her door, standing guard like the silent sentinel he always was, it still felt like he was an ocean away. She squeezed her eyes shut, letting fresh tears slip down the curve of her nose and onto the mattress. She wanted to trust. She wanted to believe. But the fear still lingered, phantom and sharp. He wasn't going to leave again. He couldn't. Sakura pressed her forehead against the pillow, her breath hitching in her throat. But she needed to hear it. She needed him to say it. That he wasn't going anywhere. That he wanted this. That he loved her. She needed Uchiha Sasuke. Not the Avenger, not the shinobi, but the man, to look her in the eyes and give her the one thing he'd always held back. His heart. This was just the beginning. The real secret will unfold in the next episode. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And hit the bell icon so you'll be the first to see what happens next. See you again in the next journey of Uzumaki Empire 2.0.